Mustafa Barghouti, welcome back to the program. Can I first start by asking you to put this in context of size and intensity? When was the last time you saw this scale of Israeli operation in the occupied West Bank?
This is definitely the largest military operation in the West Bank since 2002, when the Israeli army under Sharon reinvaded the whole of the West Bank and reoccupied every city and every village of it. So it's a large-scale operation, and it's unprecedented.
So you just heard, obviously, what your ally, the foreign minister of Jordan, said. We've also heard what your adversary, the foreign minister of Israel, has said. So when you read on X the idea that it's going to be the same kind of operations as in Gaza, that we might even have to, as he put it, temporarily evacuate Palestinians on the West Bank. I mean, we've been seeing this for 10 months now in Gaza. What do you think he means by that? What do you expect to see in the West Bank where you are?
When he says these things, we have to remember that the Israeli army is conducting a genocide war in Gaza and a war of ethnic cleansing. They've killed so far more than 40,000 people, including 17,000 children. And they've clustered now about 1.6, 1.7 million people in an area that is only 15 square miles. And they are attacking them, bombarding them, and spreading diseases among them. Is that what he's planning for the West Bank? In my opinion, what Katz said means that this is the Israeli policy of the Israeli fascist government, which is to transfer the war of genocide and ethnic cleansing to the West Bank. But we have to remember this is a unilateral war because the West Bank is occupied by Israel since 57 years. We are under Israeli military occupation. And it is totally unacceptable that an occupying power would use the might of all its army, including air force and airstrikes on occupied people. That's exactly what they are doing today. This is not a war between two armies. It's practically a war of a mighty Israeli army on civilian population.
Listen, can I ask you, because they say that it is because they've detected weapons transfers from Iran, and as we know, because we've covered it a lot and we've watched a lot, they're constantly battering Jenin and places where they say there's armed resistance, armed Palestinian resistance. And Hamas itself claimed responsibility there was an attempt at some bombings in Tel Aviv and has called for resistance. And now you've probably seen what Khalid Mashal has said, the former Hamas leader, that they have to return to, quote, martyrdom operations, which is not so subtle code for suicide bombings, on all fronts. How do you read that? Is that acceptable in the West Bank? And do you not think that in itself is a red flag and a provocation?
I think there is an intentional Israeli effort with some media effort to exaggerate the power and the abilities of some of the Palestinians who are fighting in some camps. Of course, there are a small number of young people who are carrying guns, but it's nothing in comparison to the mighty power of the Israeli army. And they don't need to do all these operations of invading all these places and trying to ethnically cleanse whole refugee camps. Now, talking about guns, it is well known and it is so confirmed and documented that most of the weapons that people have in the West Bank come from the Israeli side. These are guns that were stolen from the Israeli army by Israeli military people who sold them in the black market. That's the main source of weapons. So it's not about trafficking all these guns through Jordan to West Bank. We all know how much Jordan is restricting that, how much Israel is controlling its borders. So all these are rumors to bring an impression as if Israel is fighting with Iran. That's not true. Israel is fighting with the occupied Palestinian population. The people they have been occupying since 57 years, the people who have been displaced from their homes since 1948, and up till now are not allowed to go back home. Israel used to use the names of other countries to justify their oppression and persecution of the Palestinian people. They used to say they are fighting Soviet Union and Egypt and Syria at some point and Iraq. Now it's Iran. Maybe tomorrow they will talk about Azerbaijan. I don't know. But the reality is that this is a struggle between the Palestinian people who demand freedom, end of occupation, end of apartheid, end of this system of oppression. And there is a very short way to security, not only for Palestinians, but for Israelis as well. And that short way is to end occupation. We've been saying that for decades. What do? Could they continue wars after wars? In 2002, they reoccupied every single corner of the West Bank. Did that bring security? Did that bring peace? Of course not. The only way out of this situation is for Israel to end occupation, and for countries like the United States and European countries who are also responsible to pressure Israel to stop the occupation and end the system of oppression and persecution of the Palestinian people. I think the atrocities that are happening in Gaza should be more than enough to convince the world that it is unacceptable to continue this torture of the whole Palestinian population.
Mustafa Barghouti, we see that this is happening on the West Bank as everything is going on in Gaza, but also as the United States and others keep saying that there is a discussions, negotiations, ceasefire, hostage and prisoner swap, etc. And I'm still wondering why you think this A, do you think there's any hope for a ceasefire? And B, why you think this West Bank operation is happening at this time?
I think Netanyahu did this operation in particular to stop the possibility of a ceasefire. I don't think Netanyahu wants a ceasefire. He wants to prolong this war as long as he could. And I think he wants to continue to the war till there are American elections, because he's hoping that Trump will come and will win. And he knows very well that many, many voters will not vote for Kamala Harris if she and her administration do not do something to force a ceasefire here and stop the suffering of the Palestinian people. He knows that very well. And unfortunately, the whole Israeli society is moving in the wrong direction. You feel sometimes they are moving in the direction of fascism. And Netanyahu postponing the ceasefire, continuing the war, and now creating another war inside the West Bank, he's gaining more votes in the Israeli electoral system. Yeah. That is, of course, what encourages him to continue.
So let me ask you again, because, it seems like a weird day today or any day for Khalid Mashal to pop up and say, let's start suicide bombings again. And I just wonder how you think that is going to help security and stability in the West Bank.
I think it's a reaction to the fact that it's a reaction to the terrible atrocities that are happening, especially in Gaza. When you see all these children being slaughtered, when you see Israel practically using biological warfare, where we have 76,000 cases of infectious hepatitis now, and an endless number of cases of meningitis. And now we started to see cases of poliomyelitis. This is horrible. The whole population is at risk of diseases and death. Our medical teams tell us there is about 1.6 million people now in Gaza sick with different diseases. Our medical teams told us that every Palestinian in Gaza now gets sickness 3 times a month. Different kinds of sicknesses, respiratory infections, gastrointestinal infections, a whole population deprived from water, deprived from food, deprived from safety, no shelters, clustered in a very small area, and bombarded continuously. Today alone, the Israeli army killed 45 more Palestinians. Most of them were children. Of course, then you will see reactions from certain political leaders because they cannot tolerate what's happening here. And then you add insult to injury by expanding this terrible genocide war into the West Bank. Of course, that drives people crazy. But is there a way out of this? There is only one way. If the United States administration finally commits to the issue of peace in reality by pressuring Netanyahu and threatening him that he will be sanctioned and no military aid will be given to him unless he accepts a ceasefire and an end of this terrible situation.
Dr. Mustafa Barghouti, thank you for joining us from Ramallah.